Welcome back to episode 178 of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, dude?
On the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And most importantly, today we're bringing in Benjamin Charbit. He's the CEO of Darewise. Appreciate you for joining us, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure, great honor to be with you.
Wow, an honor, eh? Dang. Well, yeah, we heard you've been a long time, I guess, follower of this channel.
Yeah.
So that means you're obviously well aware. How far back actually? Is it like as soon as we just started talking about ordinals, or it was even before that?
Yes.
Just curious.
Yeah, this is I think it started when I was researching, content on ordinals and trying to get a lot of the different currents, because it was quite polarizing. And I'm not a technology fanatic. This is not really what's driving me. I was a game director before, so I'm more a creative player here, and I really wanted to, get the different vibes and to understand this better. And Twitter is, of course, a great location for this, but also checking on other platform. And this is how I found out.
Excellent.
About what you guys were doing, and then I just got into the rabbit hole.
Well, I'm glad we could be of some service for sure. That's good.
You do.
That's
thank you.
Feedback.
And I as I was saying before we started, thank you so much for this, because I think it's so valuable.
Yeah. Which is, so I guess we can kind of get the intros, as far as your background, because you mentioned game development, right? So as soon as we found out, I guess the game title that's generating all the buzz and headlines is Life Beyond, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This is Animoca and you guys, and I think in association with a couple of other partners, Horizon Labs, which is kind of responsible, or at least going to contribute as far as the big announcement was the first Metaverse token and the Bitcoin ecosystem that's going to drop. And that got a lot of people's attention, right? So if you can, just before we get too deep into all the other stuff, just give us your background about Life Beyond, yourself, and how all of this, got you to the ordinal space at this point.
Yeah. So about myself, I've been a game developer for a long time now, for 15 years. I joined Ubisoft after starting my career as an investment banker for a few years, and then I used to be an esport player when I was younger, and I just opportunity of life. Eventually, I got to this chance to join the Ubisoft team, doing a bunch of stuff, and but it eventually led me to join the Assassin's Creed team, where I was a game director on Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and most of my career at Ubisoft, I focused on online gaming. So whether it was on Assassin's Creed, whether it was on The Division, on other games over there, Ghost Recon, I was always kind of focusing on the multiplayer gameplay, social play, community experience, and online services in general. And so it was kind of natural for me to eventually start Darewise Entertainment, which was a company built from the get-go to trailblaze the Metaverse play. That was a long time ago, before we were even talking about the Metaverse. But I really got into this narrative. I think it was back in 2014. I just became obsessed with the Metaverse. Being an online player myself, I'm 39 now, which means that I'm part of this generation who really grew up playing MMOs, starting when I was 12, 13, playing Ultima Online, EverQuest, Star Wars Galaxies, eventually World of Warcraft, as everybody else. So I really, built experience truly meaningful, experiences, social relationships. I made some really great friendships over there. Eventually also had a form of an economic interest, because through power leveling services, gold farming, all these illegal stuff, that we were providing back then. And so the Metaverse was just a natural next step for me, which means an MMO plus. It's an MMO where you're no longer limited to being the hero, but you can now be anyone in this digital reality and live a very meaningful existence there. So that's really how it started. And Darewise was built to become a very serious player in this space, um, even without thinking so much about, I would say, a blockchain at that time. It was more about, okay, this type of virtual reality where we can have a meaningful existence. So we had to build technology for this. How do you build large scale world? Because with the existing tool, it was just not available. It was a very daunting task. How do you host a high concurrent number of players? It was also a major challenge, especially when we started. Basically, MMOs were a very small niche at the time, and most games were session-based game. Fortnite had 100 players in a session and not more. So that's a second piece of technology, and there were more technologies that we needed to build. So we kind of focused the development on kind of creating the technologies that would facilitate the development and the operations of metaverses.
Yeah.
And naturally, this led us to blockchain. And that happened for us in 2021, when after a lot of conversations with a few players, and especially with Sebastien Borgier, the co-founder of Sandbox, I think we eventually really saw the light and understood the benefit of smart contract and of permissionless the infrastructure, where now any third party could come and build experiences, services on top of your core architecture. And now you understand the unlimited possibilities that can happen. So that's how we got there. In 2022, we got acquired by Animoca Brands, which felt like also a natural move to us, because we were very savvy game developers, but definitely not the biggest expert in Web3, whether on technology or tokenomics. We had to learn this, and we were very eager to, but we thought, let's just team up with the best player. And so for them, it was an opportunity to finally have a AAA team. Perfect. And for us, the benefit was to grow our expertise in Web3. That's how we got there. And then the last major milestone happened a few months ago, I would say basically May, June, with what was happening with ordinals. And that kind of became a new obsession for me. And that led to, wow, I believe that what is happening there is a major revolution, but I don't think that the world is really seeing it this way right now, except for a niche of Bitcoin degens, who think, wow, that there's something major happening. But most of the industry is like looking at this thing as, well, that's a little phenomenon that going up and down, and that's it. I didn't feel this way. And so decided to really pivot the company towards the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I just didn't want to do it by ourselves. We, again, building a network of partners was a very important thing for us. And this is how I went to talk to Rob, the CEO of Horizon Labs, who turns out to be an old Bitcoiner, and told him, I know you guys don't do work for hire. The only time they did it was with Yuga and building ApeCoin. And they were not really work for hire. They were really like a partner in this thing. And so I said, hey, this is what I believe. Ordinals and the Bitcoin ecosystem are going to be really the next big thing in Web3. Here is a little bit of my plan. And he jumped in immediately. And that's why we're here today.
Wow. So all this started just a few months ago. This whole, I guess.
The Bitcoin
transition
move for us. It's something that happened. So Ordinal started February maybe this year, and I was looking at it, of course, but when the moment where we really decided, okay, this is something where we're without disclosing too many numbers, like the development of Darewise and Life Beyond, we're talking about several dozens of millions of dollars. So it's not a small project. Wow. It's not a small team. And making such a big gamble is not something that we could do overnight. And it's still a major. There are still a lot of people who think that we're completely crazy.
Of course.
But I believe that I have absolutely zero doubt that we're doing the right thing.
Well, if people think you're crazy, you're in the right spot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
well, you know they would, you know what they say, right? Before they think you're crazy, and after.
That's right. That's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
they
so
fight
hopefully we'll
you or
get there.
something, and then they join you, something like
They
that.
laugh at you, then they fight you.
Yeah, first they laugh at you. It's something like that. I
Yeah.
need to, but it's exactly what happened, and it's funny because I really encountered a very different persona in this conversation.
Mhm.
But I can give you one, for instance, which is true visionaries, people who've been in the Web3 space for a long time, and I think in particular to about Yatsu, the founder of Animoca Brands.
Yes.
I didn't even have to convince him;
Hmm.
he was convinced already. You know, when I mentioned him, this is the idea that I have. He was supportive instantly, and that means a lot. That speaks volume about what's going on right now.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built Mscribe, the first inscription platform built from the ground up for the metaverse on Bitcoin. Connect your Bitmap ordinals and use our tools to bring your community into the virtual realm. Support us by joining the movement at mscribe.io. Like, comment, and subscribe for the latest alpha. Back to the video. How long has Life Beyond been in development?
So we always parallelized both tracks, a little bit like, if I would say, you know, a little bit like Epic Games with Unreal Engine and its own internal production. To build Life Beyond, we needed technology, but we didn't decide to just focus on building the technology and then eventually we'd start Life Beyond. It was like, we'll start at the same time, we'll make some progress, and at the same time build the technology. And basically, Life Beyond will be the first customer of the technology that we're building. And so this started basically in early 2018.
Okay. Wow.
Just for clarification, for my own sake, is Darewise and Life Beyond two separate companies, or is Life Beyond a product?
Yeah, it's you know, we're still revisiting our legal org chart, but yeah, it's basically separated tracks where we have a technology team building all of these technologies, all the pieces of this technology stacks, and we have like our own internal game development studio, which is building Life Beyond.
I see.
It's very similar to like the improbable M squared, right? You know,
you know that we were one of the first projects to work with Improbable back then, and using Spatial OS. So yeah, it's of course, you know, Improbable is a much larger organization than we are.
Yeah, but you guys are tackling the same thing, right? Is like figuring out infrastructure for the metaverse, which is obviously like a tremendous endeavor. We got like some of the biggest companies in the world working.
You're right. So, but Improbable is really focusing on the networking side. You know, how to host, but for us, it's a series of things. There is the networking part that we are now developing our own technology, because we never really could find something that was satisfying or really serving the needs that we had, or maybe not in the fashion that we wanted. But we were also building tools that are more related to, you know, like online world development, which is by definition, when you think of the metaverse, you think of scale. Scale means concurrency of users, of course, but it also means space. Like, you need to build massive worlds, and you can't do it by hand.
Yeah.
So do you think
way too time consuming, and that's why we created technologies for this. We have a technology called Wise World, which is a procedural world generation technology that's insane, scattering, you know, the world, the assets, but also scattering the gameplay in the world, so all of this can be kind of processed rather than really hand placed. And we are also developing this technology called Eyes, which is our networking technology that is very revolutionary because it's completely different, and we'll actually publish more about it, I think, in October or in November. We'll have like some stuff to really explain. And why would we do that? Is because we also want to find ways to bring all of this technology to the Bitcoin metaverse ecosystem that we're working on. So the idea is that really, and we're still trying to figure out how to do it, but we want all of this technology is serving the development of this Bitcoin metaverse ecosystem.
Wow. So that's interesting because I don't want to get all right into bitmaps yet, but whatever because what you're talking about is, I mean, bitmap's important, but I think there's something even grander at scale, is the realization of, I guess, the stage of metaverse development. Because we saw in 2021 a lot of games basically were kind of deployed, or IP was initiated, and roadmaps laid forth of game environments, game ecosystems, whatever, maybe with some kind of like Web3 components to them, and they were being labeled as the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
And we always saw like issue with that. Like that doesn't seem like an actual digital existence layer like you're describing.
Yeah.
Right?
And to clarify, we are not building the metaverse. I don't believe that this is
Absolutely
something.
Yeah.
We're part of this open metaverse movement, and
Mhm.
Life Beyond is a destination of it. But the open metaverse goes also beyond a single blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
The open metaverse is just this collection of destinations, of services, of builders, of users.
Yeah.
So to me, Twitter is part of the open metaverse. It's it's part of the metaverse. Now the open metaverse is of course decentralized, and this is what right now kind of sets the frontiers, the boundaries of all these different metaverses. And we only intend, to create tools that really just make it easier for this new concept to grow and to expand.
Mm-hmm.
And we're providing one flagship destination, which is Life Beyond.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's been just like you. We grew up with playing video games. I was more of like a first-person shooter guy myself, rather than RPGs to a large extent.
Yeah.
But collectively, I mean, we spent a lot of time playing games. Obviously, all that time being spent earned us, virtual goods that weren't really owned by us, right? They were owned by the company. So give us your take on what Web3 actually brings to the table as far as like metaverse experience, gaming, and why you think Web3 is going to be an essential part of like our virtual experiences.
I think you mentioned the elephant in the room, which is the ownership of your asset. That's obviously the most obvious answer that we all provide to this, which is, and you have experienced this, right? You play whether it's an MMO or any other type of game, you spend a lot of time within one experience. You invest a lot of this time getting your assets better, buying better assets, and you understand that either the money or the time that you spent on these assets is gone, and you can never extract any form of value. You have no real ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So that is obviously the first very important thing. The second thing to me is that it also significantly changes the relationship between the developer and its users, because thanks to this complete ownership that you have of your own assets, now it's not the assets serving the game, it's the game serving the assets. So it's a complete different kind of I would say bargaining power between the developer / publisher and the users. And so you'll see that the developers, game development studio, will have to treat their users very, very differently.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing is that player-driven economy can really exist, and bloom and expand with a fully decentralized architecture. Otherwise, you always hit the limit of this closed ecosystem that naturally brings, the limits to entry, to extract value, and of course opportunities. And there is a last point that I think is very interesting, which is the permissionless nature of decentralized architecture. The fact that now anyone can build additional services on top of your experience without having to ask for any type form of permission, without any need for an API, an SDK, to me is a major revolution. And it's just that we haven't yet seen a lot of these things happening because, of course, we first need to have good, core experiences. But as soon as we'll have this, all of these, additional and mods and stuff that we saw, and think of EVE Online, for instance, this is going to be insane. The thing is that for EVE Online, for instance, CCP, the developer, provided all of these APIs so that the community could build on top. Well, with a Web3 game, you don't need now the developer to have open access. I haven't given you the access to this, at least for most of the use cases that we can think of. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, from the consumer's perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to own all these digital assets. But I believe the burden of designing a game using Web3 is significantly more difficult because even though like we can own, the swords and the armor and things of this MMORPG, if there's infinite of them, there's no point in actually owning it because the trade value is irrelevant, right? So then as a game designer, you have to say, okay, there's limits to the existence of these digital assets.
Yeah.
So how do you begin to decide like how you manage the economy of just the assets, not even like the monetary based economy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would actually tackle the topic differently, which is, especially if you take a game that is, monetized as a service. So, any type of online game with like a free-to-play or freemium business model where you constantly need your customers, your players who are your customers, to come to the store and buy a new item. You're doing item selling, that's your main revenue model. So what you do is you constantly power creep the existing assets. I'm sure you're familiar with that. You got this amazing sword, 3 months later, new sword is coming out. Yours is not worth much. And that's how, especially in a business model where you monetize your whale and you kind of squeeze the juice out of these whales, this is basically how all free-to-play games run today. But because of the limited supply of digital assets within a Web3 game, now you don't have to do this, because there's a limited supply. So after selling these 3,000 swords, there are no more. A few months later, you can now issue another quantity of swords. They might not be exactly the same, but they can have the same stats, which means that you don't necessarily need this player to replace it. But for the other one who wants to have a sword of this level, the only way to get it is part of this new batch. So you can create monetization that are much healthier. Also because, of course, on top of that, you have a whole secondary market. So it creates so much more opportunities. And I'm not going to get into, of course, the I would say the pitfall of interoperability, because we all want to get there, but we're not there. And we have a lot of things to figure out before. But just the fact that there is, this limited supply model, the fact that there is this secondary market opportunity already completely revolutionizes the business model of these games, of games in general. We'll see that happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because essentially you have to inject enough value into a given item for people to want them. And then you have to continue development of the game, and so you have to continue more assets and have those assets be considered valuable for the player base to go after those assets.
Right.
Exactly.
And this is why it's interesting. Why I'm surprised Yatsu was so receptive and he didn't challenge you as far as the decision to enter the Bitcoin ecosystem, because you're entering a much more less robust, less functional token environment than what exists on Ethereum or other L1s, right? There's not as much programmability to these these digital assets, right? So it makes the development it has to make the game development process infinitely more times complex. Especially now in this environment where the standards are shifting by the day.
Yeah.
So it is an issue because we are also developing in this space, and we're in this weird gray zone where nobody really knows the right direction to head towards, because there's just so much convolution and consensus right now in this specifically in the ordinal space, right? So how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, listen, I would say that, well, first, of course, Yat is an entrepreneur, and so I think the way he sees opportunity is very different from corporate people who sometimes could be more pragmatic, and would just look at numbers and look at data and less follow their instinct. Also, you're talking about an industry leader who made the move in 2017 and even earlier, where you're talking about the Animoca brand was the publisher of CryptoKitties with Dapper. So when Dapper was developing CryptoKitties, and of course it was not a hit, Yat saw this thing in a small office in Vancouver, was like, what is this thing? And these guys were developing CryptoKitties, and he said, great, we're going to be the publisher in Asia, I think. And they became an investor in Dapper. And now the rest is history, right? So I think Yat sees a very similar type of dynamic right now between what is happening in the debate, and the heated debate sometimes in the Bitcoin ecosystem, whether it's because between maxis and the participants in the ordinal movement, and what was happening back in 2017 with CryptoKitties clogging Ethereum. So that's and I feel very very lucky, very blessed to have a partner as Yat to really and more than a partner at this point, a boss, I would say, but to really support us in this direction. Now, to answer your question, yes, let's not lie and sugarcoat this. It's extremely challenging and difficult for us to do what we could have just simply launched on any AVM platform. But and it's not necessarily something that I would recommend to anyone today. If you're a game development team building a game that is already quite demanding, but that you don't have all the infrastructure that we have, I would not recommend this. But we're in a different situation, and this is what we can bring also to the Bitcoin ecosystem. Right now is that we are well aware of the missing things, and what we've been doing over the past 2 months, and especially traveling and being at the Ordinal Summit in Singapore, and I was on stage, and then we spent so much time connecting with all the community and all the different builders, because we were trying to understand really well who is doing what right now, so that we could focus our energy and our resources on on what is not covered yet. And honestly, we're still discussing with so many people to really map out completely the landscape and be like, okay, now we have all the use cases that we need to be able to operate. What is missing? And this is the part that we'll take. And of course, something that we'll do completely out of any business opportunity, because it's not something that we'll monetize, something that we'll give back to the network, but it's something that we will need for us and that we'll provide to the rest of the ecosystem. That's been our approach, and again, because overall we think that the opportunity is huge.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel?
We also built MetaZone, the first app store for the metaverse.
Buy, sell, and explore a new class of digital assets like our flagship game Rovi.ai.
Support us by collecting your digital assets through MetaZone at metazone.io.
Like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated.
Back to the video.
So I definitely want to go deeper into sort of like the economics aspect of Life Beyond. But first, I want to get a little bit more understanding of what Life Beyond is about. Can you tell us, like, is this a MMORPG, or what experiences should we expect from Life Beyond?
So Life Beyond is a venture on an alien planet to establish a new society. So on Life, you join this group of people on this new planet called Dolos. That is a very remote planet, but that is full of opportunity. but also right now a dangerous place. So the first step on Dolos right now is going to be to secure the area and be able to pioneer, to make it safe to settle. So you think it's going to take multiple forms over its lifespan. For now, it's going to feel a lot like an MMORPG without a hard class system. We don't have like classes. Everything is soft class, so it's more based on your equipment, and that you'll be able to venture out in this world, face challenges, overcome obstacle, explore, research, start building some outposts in order to make progress in this world and eventually secure this first area. But once you're there, now enters the settling phase. Settling is kind of the first metaverse experience where you now it's about building your shelter, building the foundation of your community. You can operate a business, you can farm a land, and now opens really the field of all the different roles that you can have in this society. If I can draw a parallel with World of Warcraft, for instance, in World of Warcraft, you walk around in this beautiful living and breathing world where you're going to see a merchant, a farmer, a chef, but you can never be these characters. You're always limited to being the hero. Well, this is not what Life Beyond is about. In Life Beyond, you can be anyone. You can be the hero, but you can also be the truck driver, the chef, the farmer. And as we go into the development, because of course this is a huge undertaking, we'll keep expanding and expanding all of these roles and potentials as the world matures and becomes also more of a digital reality, of a new layer of our existence, and less of a game. But we start with this very strong gaming angle because we're not big believers in all of these metaverse plays that are very social led, where the first thing you start to do is to join a world full of people, but there isn't a lot of very interesting things to do. We believe very much that developing a very compelling, engaging gaming experience, similar to what we've always done, and a lot of the team here at Delwise comes from Assassin's Creed or The Division. People from Massive Entertainment, people from Ubisoft. A lot of us have worked together on several installments of these games. Well, first, we want to leverage also this core expertise we have developing really high quality open world.
So you mentioned earlier that building a destination of the metaverse is pretty complex, very expensive. Is there going to be components where outside developers can leverage an SDK that you guys might be building?
So that's totally the plan. It's obviously a challenging thing for many, many reasons. There's the technical thing, but it's also that we're also building an IP. And so we need to make sure that first the IP is really well established before anyone can start to chime in. And so we avoid, ending up with like a patchwork that kind of starts losing its flavors. So that's why this is definitely on the roadmap. But for now, what of course is possible is everything that you can do in a permissionless way. And then we'll go deeper over the years by opening more of the world to give you access and the ability to really start now developing for the in-game experience. But that will take some time.
Right. So now that you've laid out,
which, by the way, sorry to interrupt you.
Sure, go ahead.
But which doesn't mean that we are not open to collaborations. There are a lot of them that we're already working on. That some will be announced in a month or two, where but they're curated. So rather than just saying, we're building Assassin's Creed and then no one can participate, we're saying no, we're building this world and. Brands for instance, we have an automotive brand from the physical world that's going to build stuff with us.
Right.
We're really we have curated them and we're really, partnering on this. The completely, free for all modding is not for now, but of course we want to get there.
Okay. Yeah, that's exciting. Obviously, building an experience like this large, you're going to want to leverage big brands to kind of bring the audience in and experience those brands through this virtual environment.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not so much for the growth, benefit, which of course is a nice one, but it's more because Life Beyond, of course, it takes the form of a game, but it ambitions to be way more than a game. I believe very much. I've lived in this digital world for so long, but I was never really able to say, but what if I could really have a meaningful economic existence, for instance? So, but I believe that this is going to become possible now. But it's also going to be worlds where we can get an education, where we can develop some proto skills like, oh, well, I would love to be an architect, but right now I'm a banker. Well,
Right.
in Life Beyond, you might be able to experience what it feels like to be an architect. Not that we're going to train you to the extent that you will truly, you'll be ready to, design a building in the physical world, but maybe you'll have had such a good experience in this kind of simplified simulation that now you really know that this is what you want to do.
Sure.
And so to support this, we need a very authentic, believable world. Doesn't mean that it has to be a copy of the physical reality we live in. I actually think that it's pretty boring. I don't think I really want to go into virtual Paris and virtual New York. I'd rather go into a completely different lore, a different world, but
Agreed.
that is still believable and relatable. And to do this, if you think of GTA, for instance, you can completely author 100% of it. In GTA, the brands, the characters, the movie stars, all these are completely authored by Rockstar Games. Or you can onboard the brands from the physical world, which are basically content creators, into your world. And that's our approach, which, we think is more interesting.
You made a recent announcement becoming the first metaverse ecosystem to launch on Bitcoin. Do you want to explain a little bit of,
Token,
like
we said.
Token? Yeah, correct. Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to break that down a little bit just to explain what that means exactly?
Yes. Our vision has always been that there needs to be ecosystems powered by a token to facilitate the development of a network effect. The fact is that you have this network where you have participants who are creating value, which really, this value is kind of transported within the token as a vessel, which means that, transactions are happening. Part of this transaction, when the transaction is happening, fees are generated. The fees are captured, brought into a treasury. Part of the treasury is supplying a grant program or a funding program, and then you can start having this natural flywheel of network effect, where you have contributors, generators, and then together we can grow this ecosystem. We can fund new projects. We can benefit from these new projects because they now bring value to the network, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to create really this kind of like ecosystem, Bitcoin ecosystem token. And, it wasn't really available to us. And that's why we wanted to do this. And of course, the first project to adopt it is Life Beyond.
Is there any component to your metaverse ecosystem as far as like land ownership or distribution with the virtual environments that I guess are going to be spun up from Life Beyond ecosystem? In the sense that we've seen already traditionally from Web3 metaverse ecosystems, Decentralized has a finite amount of, I guess, ownership
Land.
parcels within their virtual environment. Yes. Sandbox has that,
Yes, totally. We'll have we have a supply of a finite supply of land, which is I think always an important part, to, because it creates interesting dynamics. So we will totally do this. Yes.
Well, that's a perfect segue, I think, into why we found. So or why we were gravitated so strongly towards like the concept of bitmap, right? Because traditionally in Web3, everything, any virtual environment that's ever been attempted has been through some sort of arbitrary process, right? Where a developer like yourself or like ourselves will kind of come up with a number out of thin air, 100,000, 200,000, whatever it is. This is just the spatial parameters that we set to our virtual existence layer. But Bitmap was the first attempt at creating like a standard non-arbitrary process for generating virtual space, right? Where it's dependent entirely on blockchain information, right? The blocks, the existence of them. So it is what we label as something is like a much more organic digital matter creation mechanism, something like that, right? And there's a huge community. Obviously, you've been introduced to them. They made their presence very well known, and you know, they I guess
which is great.
Yeah. There's a lot of passion behind this idea, and I guess speaking on behalf of the whole community, like, what is your interpretation of this theory that's been put out? It's only like 3 months old, and we're starting to see very small like breakthroughs actually already happening. Like the thesis is coming true. It is an open source protocol, and developers are gravitating to it, and they are attempting to build value on top of it, right? So how do you see this proliferating, and where do you think life beyond will play along, if at all?
Yeah, totally. You know, I like to me, everything that is existing and that has been adopted has value, and our approach is never to build against this, but to find ways to collaborate with this. So, for instance, I did meet with Blockimoto and to discuss a little bit about how he envisioned things, and I wanted to understand his kind of where he came from. I don't have any like kind of, you know, definite answer on how we want to integrate Bitmap into our value proposal, but we will obviously want to find a way to. I don't think that we'll go to a point where everything, the whole, you know, land architecture of life beyond will revolve around Bitmap, but we want Bitmap to be integrated. So we're, you know, we're kind of playing right now with different ideas, but of course, you know, it's a no-brainer that this is a thing. You know, I love it because it's there are a lot of these conversations these days. You know, it's the same as, you know, BRC20 versus runes, and where we understand that technology is a commodity. What matters is what people do with it. You know, it's a little bit like when I started operating in Web3, we were spending so much time on the technology itself. What blockchain are we going to use? This one or this one? What's, you know, how is the infrastructure? How does it scale? How is it built? What's the language? But at the end of the day, it matters, but it also doesn't matter that much. What matters is who's using it, who's building on it, how many people, what is their culture. So it's exactly, for me, the same thing with with Bitmap right now. It's not whether or not this is a valuable protocol from a technology standpoint. No, it's what matters is what is happening from a community standpoint. And this is what is fascinating. And this is why, of course, we can't just disregard it. And we don't want to. That's not our mindset. We want to collaborate and build with, not against.
Sure. So Ben, I totally agree. There's definitely a challenge when you have like an existing piece of IP, trying to fit that IP into something like Bitmap, just because Bitmap is so new. Like nothing's like this has ever happened before. But if I may, I want to offer a potential angle that you guys can think about.
Yes, please. That and that, by the way, can call anyone. You know, it's a call for anyone who wants to.
Sure.
You know, reach out and send us ideas. I said on a podcast last week that we would start a DLWES Telegram group, Telegram channel, and we've just been overwhelmed since we got back from Singapore. But that's totally something that we're going to do hopefully next week. So that will be also an opportunity for, you know, anyone who has some cool ideas to jump in and bring them. So thank you. I'm going to write down some notes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So think about this. like Iron was saying, Bitmap is a virtual experience divided by what's been happening within a given block, right? And so what you could do is, you mentioned earlier you had a piece of technology that allowed you to procedurally generate a world. So what if you could connect that piece of technology to just a single bitmap, just one of the 800,000, right? You connect it, and as an owner of that bitmap, I leverage your technology and I procedurally generate a life beyond like world for my bitmap.
So I'm gonna give a shout out right now to Vincent, our chief product officer, because he'll understand why. It's whether it's part of Life Beyond or connected to Life Beyond.
Sure.
This is definitely an idea that we have to turn WiseWorld because WiseWorld is a production service. It's a production tool. It's a tool more for game studios, but Vincent had also this idea of, what if we make it available for anyone with a bitmap to turn their bitmap into a world thanks to WiseWorld?
Yeah,
so
I think that's a path. I think that's a path, because what you could do is you could enable 800,000 bitmaps be a city within the Life Beyond universe.
We've already seen it happen. IMSO Chris he's distributing procedurally generated virtual worlds based. And the thing that's cool about it is the root information comes from the unique information per bitmap per block, right? Every block is unique.
Yeah.
So that can be, I guess, the parameters of your algorithm, whatever it is you guys have developed.
Yeah.
To generate like these unique attributes of these virtual layers, right? And that is cool, right?
Yeah.
That
100%.
everything.
We thought about this. We thought about also maybe having like a whole continent or an island that is like the bitmap one, where all bitmap holders can come and have a plot of land. That's also another option, because what is interesting with this is that then you're also like located in around other bitmap holders, so there's like a common interest. So those are the things that we're exploring. But the idea that you suggested is super interesting, and that's something that we've also considered. Absolutely.
Yeah, the only thing you have to maintain, just to follow along with like the whole point of bitmap, is that when you use this procedurally generated engine, it also divides that world into its transactions, into its parcels, right? So that the bitmap owner can distribute those parcels however he sees fit. And then that community could potentially build on top of that bitmap world using the Life Beyond engine, WiseWorld, right? And so maybe through WiseWorld, you develop an SDK so that developers like us could build experiences that can be distributed across all Life Beyond bitmap virtual environments.
Yeah, the content.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we like to call those the apps of the metaverse, which that's been our focus ever since our involvement in Decentralized, right? It's the most like necessary, or the most, I don't know, like for developers to really come in and bring in some like impact for, outside of just the founding team. You're asking for a community of developers to come in and contribute. That SDK is critical, right? Because otherwise we cannot develop apps for your virtual environment and add in more utility, more functionality, right?
Right.
Yeah, totally. And it's going to be an important track for us. I think the pitfall that we're just trying to avoid is a lot of these projects, you're talking about Decentralized, and they made it possible for people to build experiences. But I mean, I'm sorry, those are not the experiences that I really want to play today, because the tool itself is very limited. For us, our approach is really, we need to make it's a little bit like, again, you can take Fortnite as a really good example, where now you have UEFN, but it took years, to get there.
Yeah.
First, they really consolidated a very, very enjoyable experience before opening it. It's a little bit the way we're seeing things. Of course, we're in Web3, and so the timing, the pacing is very different, and hopefully we'll go faster. But we have to make some decisions in order to ensure that first we all have a game that we're going to enjoy playing, and then we're able to open so that we can benefit from the whole network effect, which is, of course, inevitable. The success will go through this, but we have to design a path to success, which starts with a good game.
Yeah, and we have to be clear. This suggestion is not trivial, right? This is going to take a lot of work from the engineers and design team and economics and all that stuff in order to make this work. So it's definitely a tall ask for a development team to kind of all of a sudden just incorporate this bitmap thing that's been 3 months old.
Yeah.
But it does introduce something new that no one has had to deal with before. And I think that newness...
And even though, you know, executing might take some time, we can start talking about it now. We can start designing plans, you know, architecture, strategies to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to wait for like 18 months and be like, hey, we're ready now. Let's start talking about it. I want to talk about it now.
Sure.
I want to see, you know, I want us to publish papers, you know, intentional. The whole point is, and it's very uncomfortable for Web2 developers, because they're like, no, hold on, you only talk about things when you're 100% sure.
Yeah.
But for us, it's very different. It's like we are a part of an ecosystem, and there is no point having a metaverse play in mind if all you care about is building things on your own, you know, behind closed doors.
Right.
Where's the metaverse then?
Yeah, and this whole design thing is no different than designing the tokenomics for a token on Bitcoin, right? You just have to contextualize your virtual environment in the context of a Bitcoin block and the transactions that divide that block. So it's no different in terms of like how you think about it, but it is different in the sense that no one had to think about this until now, right? So we're definitely uncharted territories here, Ben.
But it's so much fun, you know. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So let's. Right now, we're at a stage where it's so easy to, you know, just chat, just connect on Telegram, on Twitter, get on a call, and explore things. So we should just do it.
Sure.
As much as we want, as much as we can.
Yeah, and we have about 10 more minutes, and I wanted to introduce something kind of like a new concept for you to kind of think about as well. So we were thinking about why Bitmap was so valuable, right? And it was because it was this idea that didn't depend on any human intervention, and it was the environment developed by essentially what happens on Bitcoin's organic chain. And so it's like, well, why is this valuable, right? And we've come up with this nomenclature that identifies why this is valuable. And so we've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. Humans have been recognizing patterns in the same way that Bitoshi has recognized a pattern of Bitmap, meaning the districts and parcels that make up a Bitcoin block are really it's a sort of like a metaverse, right? Humans have been discovering patterns with atoms and giving them names, and then leveraging those atoms to do stuff with, right? This matter. And so the fact that this digital matter that has been spawned through the concept of Bitmap, I think is one of the reasons why Bitmap is so valuable, right, to this community, because it's something new. And when it comes to designing a tokenomics system, there's a way where you can leverage the patterns on Bitcoin's blockchain to come up with your max supply of your token, or an inflationary supply based on how many times that pattern occurs on Bitcoin. And with every new block, that pattern may exist or may not exist. But the point is it's a completely non-arbitrary fungible token. And so the whole idea is designing a token that is not out of thin air. It is based on the data on Bitcoin's blockchain. Yeah. And so that is what we call digital matter theory. And we've been talking about it for the last few months, trying to identify why Bitmap was valuable.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of like push forward those same principles, if any developer decides to, I guess, contribute to the construction of this very open source metaverse layer on top of Bitcoin, it kind of makes sense to follow these same principles that Bitoshi kind of set forward, as much as I guess that's reasonable, right? Because obviously there's a lot of things to consider when you're building games more than just principles, right? There's actual costs at play here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very big industry. It's very cost intensive. So, but nonetheless, these are new verticals, I guess, that have not been explored. As far as we've seen, like we talked about, everything has pretty much been arbitrary up until this point. So we don't really know exactly how this contributes to like the sustainability of a game economy. It's like
or design.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, like DAO mechanisms have been kind of like games have kind of depended on DAOs a lot in the Web3 space, Web3 games to kind of make these types of decisions, right? How do we alter the supply of certain, economic components within our ecosystem, right? Let's let that the DAO figure, let's vote about these things, right? And then typically it introduces, unintended consequences potentially. So why not introduce a parallel ecosystem where everything is non-arbitrarily rooted its existence within this virtual space? So there really is no human intervention. Whatever it is, whatever the introduction of these new assets into this virtual space, the economy just kind of has to like self-adjust to these new introductions that are, again, not arbitrarily rooted, right? So it's interesting.
And all of this really resonates a lot with me. Where I'm always concerned is that how can we eventually explain this to a non-degen population?
Yeah.
And then I think this is where we always kind of hit the limit right now with Bitmap, which is it's an abstract concept like you can really enjoy when you're part of that kind of scene right now and you understand, and this is you live for it. But how do you mainstreamize it?
Sure.
And this is where I think it's hard to base everything on Bitmap, because I see a major obstacle here for this. So that's why we have to make sure that we can create some really cool use cases for Bitmap holders, like the ones we've discussed for example. That's I think more of a realistic.
Yeah, and really, what we're talking about here is goes outside of Bitmap. So in this particular part of the conversation, forget about Bitmap. It's when you're talking about a tokenomics design on top of Bitcoin, just you could, in theory, leverage the data that's on top of Bitcoin as the starting point for the max supply of a token. Or you could use the data on Bitcoins to suggest an inflationary supply of a token. And and it has absolutely nothing to do with Bitmap, but it's the token of your economy that is based on the data on Bitcoin's blockchain. Because you guys mentioned that you're coming up with a Bitcoin token, and so the challenge here is you could remove sort of the arbitrary decision making of the max supply of the token and leverage the data on Bitcoin's blockchain. So that's sort of like kind of like the angle that we think about when we're trying to build a world from Bitcoin, and it's the new thing that we can leverage so that it removes a lot of the human decision-making processes with a lot of this stuff. Because let's say your token supply was, 100 million, and it's like so many digits, but it's a non-arbitrary number. And you introduce that to your economy and say this is the supply of the token because you can find it on Bitcoin's blockchain, right? It exists on Bitcoin's blockchain in this form of a pattern. And so I think that building that into a game is something that could be interesting. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I see two things. So the first one is, of course, the interesting opportunity to do is that then you could connect your tokenomics to and the token value to the health or the growth of the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yes,
which would basically mean how many blocks have been minted, and
that's right.
And so, but then, while we're saying there's no arbitrary value, actually there is one, because eventually we know the max supply, right?
Right.
Because eventually there's a max supply of Bitcoin as well.
Sure.
So that's the second thing is, and I'm just saying this at the top of my mind, but a very like they're an important thing for a token is the liquidity of this token. And the liquidity, of course, it can be just measured as what is the daily transaction volume, how many people are trading it and for how much every day. And this is driven by, of course, the demand for the token that can come from either the utility of the token today or the perceived value of the token in the future. And when you start digging there, you realize that a lot of this liquidity is driven by institutional investors, hedge funds, a little bit exactly like in the physical world on stock markets. And while we can demonize these players, I think we should not, because they contribute to the liquidity.
Sure.
And because you have this liquidity, you have a valuable asset in your hand. And when you need to sell it, you can find someone who's selling it, or when you want to buy it, you find someone to buy it from. And I think that and so we need to make sure that this is also compliant with this type of players, because we need them.
Mm-hmm.
So is such a model with a form of uncertainty in the token supply, could that be an obstacle for them, to because they're purely investors, they're just speculators basically. Honestly, I don't know, but that's one thing that I'm wondering.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I really believe that we need to create tokens that are really supported by very tangible utility, but at the same time we need to make sure that, of course, this is nothing, that the design of this token are not a turn off for speculators, because we need them.
Sure. Yeah.
It's unpleasant to hear, it's a very unpopular even stance, but we need speculators because they bring liquidity, and liquidity is the key.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's if you can design a token that brings in speculators, that is the early market adopters of a given token. And
the problem is when you only have speculators.
Yeah, that's right.
And no utility to support.
That's right.
Intrinsically the token, whether it's a fungible or non-fungible, then of course eventually it crashes, and it was like a very similar pump and dump and stuff like that. But
right.
But you need both. Just having utility but no speculators, then unfortunately we don't have enough users, especially today, to bring enough liquidity. But the truth is, even when you own a stock of like a very, like, let's say a Fortune 500 company, and you own a stock, like the liquidity could not be provided itself just by retail investors. That would not be enough.
That's true.
In our economies.
Yeah.
And our economies would just not be able to run with that level of fluidity if we didn't have speculators. So anyway, I'm probably derailing the conversation, but
no, that's good. That's good.
This is why operating something in Web3 is so much more complex.
It is, because
it's not just building a game anymore. You see, it's like
you're building a society, an economy,
and it's fascinating. But we like to say that building a game is like launching a space program. Well, now it's even more complex.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, Ben, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Life Beyond. Is there any last takeaways that you want our community to know about? Any releases to get ready for? Anything?
Well, we actually just, if you guys want to check it out, of course, come to playlifebeyond.com. We actually just launched our new, what we call the hub. So the hub is the spaceship crashed on the planet, and so right now you guys can download the client on PC and Mac, enter the game, just stay in the hub, interact with a few devices in this big lobby within the spaceship, and also play with a couple of prototypes, one around navigation, the other one around combat. It's just for all of the curious people out there who wants to have a look at what it's going to look like visually in terms of animation and stuff. It's obviously not the core game experience delivered, but gives a little feeling. So come check it out, and of course join our Discord, come on Twitter, come talk to us. My DMs are open, so just message me. I get a lot of them, so I do my best to keep up, but really right now we are absolutely not interested to build in a vacuum without connecting. So please reach out.
Excellent. Yeah, we're gonna download it. We're gonna check it out ourselves and see what the hub is all about. All right, Ben, appreciate you for joining us. This has been a pleasure talking to you about Life Beyond and Darewise.
Thank you.
Everything that's going on, man.
Yeah, and we definitely wish you good luck on your endeavors, because I mean a lot is riding on.
Yeah.
Not to put added pressure, but everybody building in this space is contributing to, potentially, because we all feel it internally, like there's some sort of like gut instinct. That's the reason why we're all here.
That's right.
Contributing to this space. But we feel like whatever it is, we end up succeeding as far as providing different pillars. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's GameFi, DeFi, whatever the primitive.
Really, I think, mark my word, if you are in the space right now, whether it's your project that is succeeding or not, you're building something for you're creating a lot of value for yourself for the future. If you think what is happening on Ethereum is big, wait to see what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking all about Life Beyond. I'm talking about the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah.
We feel exactly the same way.
I think we might have said those exact same words at some point somewhere on some other podcast. But yeah, we feel the same way. And the community is obviously there. We see the passion every day. And really, that's what it's all about. We've been around long enough to kind of like be able to we have like a heat sense for like whatever things happen. We saw the same thing happen early NFT days.
Yep.
There was just like this weird fringe passion like in the Web3 space, and it flourished into like this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it got everyone's attention. And I think you're right. I think this whole Bitcoin space is going to be that all over again, or bigger, like you're saying.
I think it will be way bigger. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ben. So all the links will be in the description. I appreciate you guys for watching. Ben, again, thank you so much. And like Iman was saying, good luck with Life Beyond. And let us know. We have, I guess, a lot of information as far as bitmaps go. We can help contribute there. So ask us some questions.
We totally need to follow up on this.
Yes.
And to spend more time brainstorming and sharing ideas. And again, we want to build with it together, absolutely not against it. So we need to explore, and we need a lot of brains right now to figure out the best solutions.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Thank you so much, Ben. And we'll follow up on Twitter. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.